Hey lunatics, today we are going to be reviewing Amazon Luna. Amazon Luna is one of the newcomers coming into a relatively open but tried space in the form of a cloud subscription streaming service for gaming. They aim to be a big name player with their Luna Plus subscription, along with their partnership with Ubisoft and their subscription service Uplay Plus, to allow gamers to play some of the best games without needing to have access to their own dedicated hardware. Is it worth the $5.99 a month beta pricing, which may be subject to change, or will it be better to purchase your own gaming system in the form of a console or a gaming PC? Is the game list even worth it at this price point? And is it compatible on enough mediums for it to be accessible to everyone? And finally, will it actually be stable enough to game on? Let's find out. The requirements for running Amazon Luna is to have high-speed internet, which in this case means 10 megabits per second at a minimum for 1080p at 60 FPS. And if you wanted to play at 4K, you would need to up that requirement to 35 megabits per second. The physical hardware specs are pretty low, as it only mentions an Intel HD 4000 graphics or better for a PC, but you are also able to run it within a Mac ecosystem, a browser, on an iPhone or iPad, and even a Fire Stick TV. Currently, there is no mention of support on Android, though there are workarounds that I will talk about later. These requirements are not too demanding, and even with my parents' not so good Wi-Fi, it was still able to keep up and let me get through a majority of the Metro Exodus campaign without too much interference. To stream consistently at this rate requires a decently sized data cap, as they say it takes around 10 gigs of data per hour of streaming. The input lag was alright, as in good enough to aim, but not good enough to be precise. It definitely caused some missed shots and mission retries. Amazon recommends using either a direct Ethernet connection or using the 5 GHz bandwidth, which is what I chose to do, as my laptop didn't have an Ethernet port and I wanted to truly experience what gaming on the cloud was like. The freedom offered by streaming the games became very apparent when I wanted to leave my desktop to head to a more comfy spot. It was easy, as all I had to do was fire Luna up on my laptop and I was ready to continue. Being on Wi-Fi, and at times using a Bluetooth controller, really solidified why the all-wireless trend is being coveted and pushed on so much, though you do have to wonder what all these frequencies are doing to us. These low-spec requirements are very useful, especially around the holidays, when you may be leaving your gaming rig behind to visit friends and family. But that's okay as long as you have your laptop, a decent internet connection, and a mouse or a controller. This is where Luna really excels at selling itself, while you are far away from your hardware, but not far away from the games. Amazon Luna allows for a few conventional input options such as the Xbox One controller, the PS4 controller, a keyboard and mouse, and finally, their Luna controller. It does not specifically support other off-brand controllers, but I was able to use a knockoff Bluetooth controller originally meant for the Switch, using a workaround with Steam's Big Picture mode to get it to recognize the generic controller setup. Though it wasn't ideal, as the thumbstick seemed to have a bigger dead zone and any attempt at precision was moot. I primarily used a mouse and a keyboard, or when I wanted to use a controller, the Xbox One controller, but that was when it was wired, as I had no batteries, and they both worked really well. There did seem to be a slight input lag, but it wasn't noticeable enough that it stopped the game from being enjoyable. I did not buy their Luna controller, so I have no opinion on it, but they do have claims that, if true, could be a much better alternative. When using a Bluetooth controller, it had about the same experience as a wired one, and didn't seem to introduce too much additional input lag. Overall, the amount of controllers Luna supports seem to be a good start, and if you have a more generic or obscure controller, rest easy knowing there are workarounds to get them to work. Running the stream through the Windows app was pretty straightforward and doesn't have too many options to tinker with. at least at the time of the recording. Running it through the browser, however, was a little more hit or miss. At first, the initial stream appeared to be a choppy, unplayable mess until I stopped recording. It seems as though running Luna through the browser uses primarily all of your CPU, even if you have a dedicated GPU like my laptop's GTX 1050. In contrast, though the app still requires a high percentage of the CPU, it also utilized about 50% of my dedicated GPU, allowing me to actually record the gameplay. If you're not recording or doing too many CPU intensive tasks, it should work about the same or a notch under the app. Since I don't own an iPhone or an iPad or a Fire Stick TV, I was not able to test it out on those devices. But I was able to test it out on Android utilizing another streaming software called Moonlight Game Streaming. Moonlight Game Streaming is an open source version of the NVIDIA Game Stream, but offers a more customized approach. Using this method, I was able to initially stream Amazon Luna through to my NVIDIA Shield, and that worked without a hitch, even with the added layer of streaming and input lag. Playing a precision necessary game wouldn't be too fun, but Metro's slower paced gameplay proved to be an enjoyable experience. Running that same setup through to my Note 8 on my parents' Wi-Fi proved to be a worse affair. Because they were just at the very bottom of the minimum requirements to stream Luna, adding an additional layer of streaming easily overloaded how much the internet provider was able to handle and resulted in a laggy, pixelated mess that was nigh unplayable. But alas, since that was a problem with the inadequate internet, having above or better internet speeds can easily make this a viable solution to play on an Android-based device. The last test I did was to stream through to a Samsung Smart TV by projecting it using the built-in Windows 10 functionality. It was able to stream pretty well as long as the network wasn't too congested, and the picture quality was about on par to my laptop, but the input lag introduced by that was a little too much towards the unplayable side. Overall, using the app was the most stable and superior method with it splitting up its GPU requirements, but there are also a few other viable methods depending on how you want to enjoy your experience and how good your internet is. The games that Luna initially comes with is a pretty diverse spread, ranging from AAA titles to the indie hidden gems, but overall, pretty solid games. A few honorable mentions would be Metro Exodus, Grid, The Surge 1 and 2, Control, and the complete Castlevania and Contra collections. These titles are good, but beyond that, I don't recognize too many of the other titles in the catalog. That doesn't mean they're not good, it just means they're a little bit more towards the indie or obscure side. Though the lineup for Luna Plus isn't too noteworthy, the addition of Uplay Plus really creates a broader area of play, though it requires a separate Uplay Plus subscription for an additional $14.99 per month. Since I was specifically playing this because of a beta, I only had access to the Luna Plus catalog. Regardless, they can cycle through and add additional games throughout the service's lifespan. A few of the games, notably The Surge 2, was capped at 30 FPS for some odd reason, but most of the other games I tried were supposedly locked to 60 FPS, but when running MSI Afterburner with its FPS counter, it seemed that a weaker internet connection was contributing to an unlocked FPS, usually hovering around 45 to 55 FPS. There were a few hiccups and a few times when the FPS would dive bomb, but that seemed partially due to my laptop running in battery saving mode, and plugging it in remedied the problem. One downfall of cloud streaming services is even though they may boast a huge catalog of games, none of those games are actually owned by you, and therefore can be revoked at any time once your subscription is over, or if you violate one of their terms and conditions. Now, this isn't a problem unless you like the feeling of owning a game in having the game forever once you've purchased it, and being able to modify it to your heart's content. However, for some games, I know that I may just play it once and then never touch it again, in which case, that's not too big of a deal. Amazon Luna would be a fantastic service for a serial gamer, where you want to experience as many games as possible without paying all the individual games' price. Overall, I'm content with the lineup. It isn't too exciting, but it has enough games to appease my taste, and there's always room to grow. There can be an argument made that cloud streaming is the way we are headed towards in the future to consume media such as video games, as it satisfies a more eco-friendly view with less physical products being brought in exchange for a centralized company providing all of the heavy lifting. This can be argued that this is a more plug-and-play benefit, as you only need a compatible device and decent internet. You also don't have to deal with any drivers and tuning any of the settings to play a solid game. If you are part of the population with no dedicated gaming machine, whether it be a console or a PC, and you want to be able to play a multitude of different games, then a cloud streaming service like Luna may be the solution to your dilemma. The sole benefit of being able to game anywhere without being tied down to a gaming tower or console, as long as you have internet, is a huge plus in terms of portability. Especially with it being around the holidays, the release of a cloud streaming service such as Luna has been a huge help in not having to lug around additional gear just to play a game. With Luna's potentially growing library and partnerships, along with their low introductory price and wide range of supported devices, I would say Luna is worth a try, if only for a month, as it allows you to test out a bunch of different genres of games, while also giving you enough time to finish one or two of them if you happen to get invested. Will you be subscribing to Luna or a similar streaming subscription? Let me know in the comments down below, and hit the like button if this video was informative. Subscribe for more videos like this, and until next time, stay bright.